Starting with the love list, Jordan Addison, taken, of course, after Jackson Smith-Njigba. But, guys, when he was drafted, there was excitement on this desk of great landing spot, great player. He was my wide receiver, too, right behind JSN. Gets to play in an offense with Justin Jefferson. We know Kirk Cousins gets the ball out. You don't have to worry about any of that. And really, Barry, Jordan Addison walks into a situation that he's a tailored number 2 wide receiver from day one of camp.
Adam Thielen ran the second most routes of any wide receiver in the NFL last year. He had 107 targets. So there's 107 targets that are now in Carolina, that have left. They didn't really replace. They didn't have any big free agent signings. They'll have T.J. Hawkinson for a full year, so that number's a little bit skewed because obviously he'll be a bigger part of the offense. But still, if you're like, well, they got Hawkinson there, and obviously Jefferson's going to command a lot. K.J. Osborne, as their number 3 receiver last year, got 90 targets. Yep. And so now it's Addison or K.J. Osborne. Kevin O'Connell likes to throw. This is going to be a downfield passing offense. It's going to be a fantasy-friendly offense. So to me, Jordan Addison should be the number 1 rookie taken this year in redraft at wide receiver. You're taking Bijan first, obviously, but I'm just saying among the wide receivers, to me, Jordan Addison is the number 1 rookie in redraft this year. And a special player, Connor.
A special player. I mean, somebody that's played inside and outside. He won the Bilikinoff 2 years ago at Pitt. Goes to USC. He's played with NFL quarterbacks already. Yeah. Kenny Pickett, of course, we're going to see Caleb drafted probably number 1 overall in a year. I mean, he's somebody that can really do it all. And the thing with Addison is pro-ready. Full route tree, great hands. There's just no worry here. And you brought up O'Connell, a guy that lives in 11 personnel. Even if they want Osborne on the field a little bit more, that means Addison's on the field automatically because they roll out 3 wide receivers time after time. So, Jay, I mean, this is just an exciting rookie wide receiver that it's like not just dynasty, it's not just long-term. It's no, this guy matters now.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the analysis should center around like what you think of KJ Osborne because people are kind of sliding him in to be the Thielen replacement, the number 2. Like KJ Osborne,
I think that's wrong. Yeah,
he had a sick game against the Colts when the Colts were up 33-0, and the Vikings just throwing. He had 157 yards and everything. But outside of that, he didn't do much last season, KJ Osborne. So I think that number 2 receiver role in Minnesota is totally up for grabs, and there's no reason why Addison can't grab it.
Another rookie wide receiver on the love list, Barry. Quentin Johnston goes in the first round to the Chargers, who are all over this wide receiver class. Since entering the NFL, Justin Herbert ranks top 5 in completions and attempts on passes of 15-plus air yards. Quentin Johnston, big body target. He likes to get working down the field.
And that's the point, right? We talked to a friend of the podcast, Austin Eckler, on this show last year. We're like, yo, you got Justin Herbert who's got a cannon for an arm, and he's so good down the field. Why does he keep dumping it off to you? And Austin Eckler was, I'm paraphrasing, but basically because we don't have a deep threat. You know, we talked about the fact that Jalen Guyton going down in the preseason was a really under-the-radar injury, not because Jalen Guyton was going to be a big fantasy part of, a big piece in fantasy football, but because he stretched the field for them. And so now they get that in Quentin Johnston. Remember, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams combined to miss 11 games last year. They both are injury prone. They're both getting up there in years. And so great landing spot for Quentin Johnston, who I think immediately becomes the number 3. I think he slides in above Josh Palmer, if not immediately, very soon, shortly after. And then just given the injury history of Allen and Williams, I think you could see Johnson producing sooner rather than later. And dynasty-wise, just a great landing spot to get to be in LA with the Chargers with Justin Herbert for a long time.
Yeah, I think the Chargers are being a little bit slept on overall, at least on offense, because they were so banged up. Because Herbert had an array of maladies last season, didn't miss time, but was just kind of knocked around and was dealing with problems. And Mike Williams goes down, Allen goes down. They missed Rashawn Slater for basically the whole year. He comes back. That offensive line, which has been. I mean, the offensive line of the Chargers has been a weakness for, it feels like, 15 years. Phil Rivers never had a good line. Now they have a good line. Now they have Justin Herbert and his cannon arm. And this is going to be a really explosive offense that's going to be playing in shootouts. And so Johnston, I mean, if he's good enough, which we think he is, then he can be valuable from day one.
And by the way, I'll just say, Kellen Moore from the Cowboys. I'm a Kellen Moore fan. I feel like he was held back by
your man, Mike
by
McCarthy.
Jerry and Mike McCarthy.
Yeah.
I do. I genuinely do. So I think Kellen Moore is a pretty good play caller. So. I'm excited about this Chargers offense.
A couple other mentions here from the rookie class. Of course, Jonathan Mingo goes to a situation with the Panthers that there should be a lot of targets on the table, even with the rookie quarterback under center. Rashee Rice, an acrobat artist, going to the Chiefs offense. Tell me if you've heard that before. Marvin Mims goes to the Broncos. You got Tank Dell staying in Houston, going to the Texans. Jalen Hyatt, an all-vertical threat to the Giants offense. Cedric Tillman, he was my wide receiver, I believe 4 in this class, and he got taken in the 3rd round. Great value for the Browns. And then, guys, this list rounds out with a couple tight ends. Dalton Kincaid goes to the Bills. Sam Laporta ends up being drafted ahead of Michael Mayer to the Lions. And then you see a non-rookie on the list here, of course, in Juwan Johnson for the Saints because...
Well, listen, I mean, they traded Adam Trotman. They didn't draft a wide receiver this year. Right? I mean, until I think the 6th round. Right, so shout out to my friend Matthew Friedman who pointed this out. Juwan Johnson, who was a free agent, got retained by the Saints. They brought him back. They got rid of Trotman. They don't really have a lot of competition. We don't know what's going on with Michael Thomas. Think about Derek Carr to Darren Waller. Like, this is a quarterback that likes his tight end. Juwan Johnson sneakily had a really good draft weekend, and that's somebody that I think is, a borderline top 10 tight end that won't cost you top 10 tight end prices. A couple of names on that, others receiving votes, just in terms of opportunity. Marvin Mims, the first wide receiver drafted by Sean Payton. Obviously, we've heard a lot of rumblings about Sutton and or Judy on the trade block. The other wide receivers, Hamler, Patrick, have been banged up quite a bit. You mentioned Cedric Tillman. Browns offense can be wide open.
Yep.
And after Amari Cooper, there's not, they've got Njoku, of course, but I think he's got a real chance to be the number 2 opposite of Amari Cooper for Deshaun Watson, what I think is going to be a pretty wide open offense. You mentioned Rashee Rice. Patrick Mahomes was banging the table for him, saying, go get me this guy. They worked out this summer. That's a pretty good endorsement. They got a lot of guys there. 2 people that I think have real opportunity, Tank Dell in Houston. Nico Collins, John Mechie.
It's not a lot there.
Noah Brown, Kringle McKringle. I think I made one of those guys' names up.
Good one.
But you don't even know who they all are. Anyway, Tank Dell's got a chance to be the number 1. Robert Woods, the ghost of Robert Woods, is there. He's got a chance to be the leading wide receiver of the Texans immediately. And finally, Dalton Kincaid. Just think about, they were so desperate for slot help last year, the Bills. They brought Cole Beasley. They were like, Cole Beasley, get off your couch, pack your bags, and come back to Buffalo. He should be a ton of so he's going to qualify as a tight end, but he's not going to be a tight end the way Dawson Knox is. He's going to be their slot receiver. He's got, I think you said on draft night, he had the best. You thought
I
he
thought
had,
so.
You thought he had the best hands in the draft. And so Kincaid is just a really special player who's basically going to be the slot receiver for the Buffalo Bills, and he's going to qualify as a tight end. And, again, whether you think about Cole Beasley or the moments that Khalil Shakur had last year, it's going to be Diggs and Gabe Davis on the outside and Dalton Kincaid inside for the Bills, I think.
On the hate side of things, we start with that Seattle offense. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. I know you projections right now. Barry Metcalf is in that 12 to 15 range. Lockett is in 25 to 30. The big story here is that they took Jackson Smith and Jigba at the 20th overall selection. So now there's an actual real number 3 wide receiver in this offense.
Yeah, the fact they took JSN and they took Charbonnet, there's just too many guys now. There's too many guys, and also Pete Carroll loves to run the ball as well. So when you're talking about Metcalf and Lockett being on the hate list, there's just not a lot of ball to go around.
3 straight years for Metcalf and Lockett, each to have a target share north of 22%. And to me, the bigger concern here is Tyler Lockett. I think both Metcalf and Lockett make the hate list because both of their fantasy values took a step down because JSN, who we all liked as the number 1 receiver coming out of college this year, and he went number 1. He was the first wide receiver drafted. He's going to command a decent amount of targets. He plays in the slot, and the concern there is that 42% of Tyler Lockett's targets this year and last year came from the slot. So the last 2 years, just to be clear about this, 42% of Tyler Lockett's targets over the last 2 seasons have come from the slot, which is where JSN is going to play. So I think it's a much bigger hit to Lockett than it is to Metcalf, who's still going to have his vertical role, his red zone role.
Listen, I'm with you completely. When you look at Seattle's offense last year, that period of time where Lockett was hurt, you just looked at the offense and you're like, they need another wide receiver. And now they're going to get that out of the gate where JSN is going to have the opportunity to eat into their targets right away while also being protected from injuries. Jay, you brought up there's just a lot of mouths to feed in this offense in the pass game.
And, it's great for Seattle overall because that's a good football problem and a terrible fantasy problem.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, respectfully, okay? Respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.